odds and certain death, yet chose to remain at their stations and perish therein to the final man. His Majesty's regret having been expressed at the dearth of knowledge and insight upon these subjects, then did intercede God Ahura Mazda on his Majesty's behalf. A survivor of the Hellenes, as the Greeks call themselves, was discovered, grievously wounded. The Greek survived the night and the morning following. Within 10 days the man had recovered speech and mental faculty, and though yet confined to a litter and under direct care of the royal surgeon, was able not only at last to speak, but to express his fervent desire to do so. The following initial interview took place in His Majesty's campaign tent. The captive was brought in upon a litter, eyes cloth-bound, so as to dissanction sight of His Majesty. The prisoner was instructed not to speak directly toward the royal presence, but to address himself to the officers of the household guard, the Immortals, stationed upon His Majesty's left. The Greek was directed by Orontes, captain of the Immortals, to identify himself. He responded that his name was Cheones, the son of Scamandridas, of Astakos, a city in Acarnania. Speaking from his litter, and yet struggling with weakness of breath from several, as yet unhealed, wounds of the lungs and thoracic organs, he stated that he was unfamiliar with the Persian style of discourse, and further stood unfortunately lacking in the gifts of poesy and story-spinning. He declared that the tale he could tell would not be of generals or kings. He could only relate the story as he himself had lived it and witnessed it, from the vantage of a youth and squire of the heavy infantry, a servant of the battle-train. His Majesty, responding through Orontes, asserted that this, the infantryman's tale, was precisely what he wished most to hear. What kind of men were these Spartans, who in 3 days had slain before His Majesty's eyes no fewer than 20,000 of his most valiant warriors? What were they like as men? Whom did they love? What made them laugh? His Majesty knew they feared death, as all men. By what philosophy did their minds embrace it? Most to the point, His Majesty said, he wished to acquire a sense of the individuals themselves, the real flesh-and-blood men. Beneath his cloth-bound eyes, the prisoner bowed and offered a prayer of thanksgiving to some one of his gods. The story His Majesty wished to hear, he asserted, was the one he could truly tell, and the one he most wished to. It must of necessity be his own story, as well as that of the warriors he had known, nor could the telling confine itself exclusively to the battle, but must proceed from events antecedent in time, for only in this light and from this perspective would the lives and actions of the warriors at Thermopylae be given their true meaning and significance. His Majesty being satisfied, the Greek was given a bowl of wine and honey for his thirst, and asked to commence where he pleased, to tell the story in whatever manner he deemed appropriate. The man, Cheones, bowed once upon his litter, and began. I had always wondered what it felt like to die. There was an exercise we of the battle-train practised when we served as punching bags for the Spartan heavy infantry. It was called the oak, because we took our positions along a line of oaks at the edge of the plain of Otona, where the Spartiates ran their field exercises in fall and winter. We would line up, 10 deep, with body-length wicker shields braced upon the earth, and they would hit us, the shock troops, coming across the flat in line of battle, 8 deep, at a walk, then a pace, then a trot, and finally a dead run. The shock of their interleaved shields was meant to knock the breath out of you, and it did. It was like being hit by a mountain. Your knees, no matter how braced you held them, buckled like saplings before an earth-slide. In an instant, all courage fled our hearts. We were rooted up like dried stalks before the ploughman's blade. That was how it felt to die. The weapon which slew me at Thermopylae was an Egyptian hoplite spear, driven in beneath the plexus of the rib-cage. But the sensation was not what one would have anticipated, not being pierced, but